It's no mystery that most YouTubers will do anything for views, from the world's dumbest pranks to literal threats, stealing from innocent people to actual murder. But how often do these YouTubers actually face consequences for their actions? Well, more often than you'd think. There are actually hundreds of instances where YouTubers have gone to prison for what they've done online, with their crimes ranging from unbelievably stupid to unbelievably deranged. But we'll start off by looking at the unbelievably stupid ones. Now, we've all seen some version of the classic entitled YouTube prankster, using innocent people just trying to go about their day as unwilling participants on their unfunny hidden camera show. But I guarantee you haven't seen someone do this quite like Kanga Ren, aka Reset. The Spanish creator started on YouTube in 2014, and his journey began innocently enough, posting gameplay from various video games. But he quickly became known specifically for his videos about the violent anime stealth action video game Yandere Simulator. However, over the course of the following years, Ren, like many other channels, had fully transitioned to creating content centered around reality challenges and pranks, made popular by leading creators such as Logan Paul and Mr. Beast. And this transition would mark the beginning of the end for Ren, because in 2017, just 3 years after he joined the platform, Ren posted a prank video that would change his life forever. The prank was simple enough: remove the cream from a pack of Oreos, replace the cream with toothpaste, and feed it to someone none the wiser, and film their reaction and watch the AdSense money roll in. And Ren chose the perfect victim, someone who would happily take Oreos from a stranger, a homeless man. But what Ren failed to realize is that ingesting toothpaste in mass quantity can cause severe vomiting, diarrhea, and difficulty in breathing. And although there was no evidence that the homeless man in the video experienced these symptoms, Rayset's 1.2 million subscribers didn't appreciate his willingness to effectively poison a homeless person for views, and neither did Spanish courts, because soon after, Rayset was charged and eventually found guilty of violating the moral integrity of the homeless man. He was ultimately sentenced to 15 months in prison and was banned entirely from YouTube for 5 years. And throughout the entire process, Ren really showed very little remorse. He argued that it was just a joke, and even directly accused the prosecutor of being too serious to understand the joke. Another defense claimed it was all part of a show and that people enjoy what is morbid. In the original video, he claimed that the toothpaste helped the homeless man brush his teeth because, quote, he probably hasn't cleansed them since he became poor. And perhaps worse, in an apology video following the incident, Ren blamed the audience for their reaction to the prank, citing that, quote, people exaggerate over jokes in the street on a beggar, when surely if it's a normal person they wouldn't say anything. Ren clearly has no remorse for what he's done, and he views the homeless as mere NPCs who can be exploited and tortured for entertainment. And even though an incident of this caliber is somewhat rare, it's certainly representative of a much more problematic attitude that has swept across YouTube in recent years: views over everything no matter the cost. The truth is that YouTube rewards those who are willing to toe or cross the line, and has consistently done so for years. So it's really no wonder that creators like Ren are willing to disregard it altogether. But Ren wasn't the first, and he won't be the last. In fact, he isn't even the only high-profile YouTuber to have purposely poisoned someone under the guise of a prank. But before we continue, I want to tell you about our video sponsor Raycon. When I first tried Raycons, the quality of the sound took me aback because the depth and clarity of songs was astonishing, and by using its features like noise isolation along with its water-resistant build, I was able to fall into my own little world, walking outdoors listening to music. And I love using them especially when I work out, because of their sweat and water resistance, meaning they survive when I go for runs in the rain. Not to mention their sound profiles, like their pure sound, which is perfect for clarity to hear every single note. This is a great feature for podcast and audiobook listening, which I like to do when I go for walks. But for when you're listening to music, you can use their balanced sound profile, which is great for most music listeners who like to switch between a variety of music genres. And if you like music like hip-hop, you can also use their bass sound profile, with Raycons giving you 8 hours of playtime and 32 hours of life, meaning that I could use them all day when I went hiking. And it doesn't just have a great battery life and sound quality, but Raycons also have a perfect physical design, meaning they fit in your ear and stay put no matter what I'm doing, running, jumping, you name it. And I can wear them for hours without any discomfort. And you can also choose your Raycon style in either carbon black, electric blue, rose gold, or flare red. And the best part, the affordability. You're getting all of these premium features at a fraction of the cost of other leading brands. It's really no wonder Raycon's everyday earbuds have tens of thousands of 5-star reviews. So check out Raycons today at buyraycon.com/moonyt for 15% off your order, plus free shipping. In 2020, Indonesian YouTuber Ferdian Pelika was arrested for something similar, distributing rotten garbage and expired food to struggling transgender women pretending to be aid. And this YouTuber now faces up to 12 years in prison for his crimes. But both of these YouTubers represent cases of YouTubers targeting specific communities who are particularly vulnerable. You could simply write their cases off as extreme examples of classism or homophobia. It really has little to do with YouTube specifically. That is until you discover the slew of prank-centric crimes by YouTubers in recent years, and many of them don't discriminate as to who they victimize for profit. Take the Stokes twins, for example. Two brothers with over 25 million subscribers on YouTube and counting, with the world at their fingertips. But in 2019, they were making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Alex and Alan Stokes have been on YouTube since 2015 and have managed to avoid major controversy. But in 2019, the twins were arrested for a bank robbery prank gone wrong. In the subsequently removed video, the twins were shown running from a bank, donning all black clothing and masks while carrying duffel bags full of money. Bystanders looked on in shock as they believed it was real, and this was the desired reaction to the prank. However, the situation soon took a turn for the dangerous. After they had finished running past the public, they had booked an Uber to be their fake getaway vehicle. The Uber driver was planned to be yet another NPC to get a reaction from for the video. However, the Uber driver, terrified of the consequences for assisting a bank robbery, refused to drive the twins to their destination, but it was already too late. The public had already phoned the police, and the police, unaware that this was a prank, arrested the twins and drew their weapons on the innocent driver, who they believed to be an accomplice. And what makes this even worse is that it was actually the second time the twins had pulled this prank to film their video. The first time, police let them off with a warning. They later pled guilty to the charges of false imprisonment and false reporting of an emergency, and were given 1 year probation, 160 hours of community service, and were required to pay restitution.
When the brothers from Irvine, who gained millions of YouTube followers by making prank videos, could end up in prison. Alan and Alex Stokes have been charged with false imprisonment, accused of faking bank robberies in Irvine last October. And during one of the pranks, police mistakenly pulled a gun on an Uber driver.
Despite the Stokes twins paying for their negligence and disregard for the public, there's a reason they thought their prank was okay. It's because YouTubers stand more to gain from controversy than they stand to lose. Just look at some of the leading faces on YouTube, such as Nelk or Gideon. Both have had a fair share of controversy and arrests. Members of Nelk have actually been arrested for some of their pranks, including faking a in a Barnes & Noble, and disturbing the peace in a Target, and impersonating security personnel at the mall. Gideon has been banned from major sporting institutions such as the NBA, WNBA, and Wimbledon, whilst also being arrested for trespassing on a university campus during a prank. But in the wake of these controversies, these creator empires were thriving more than ever, because people love raunchy, controversial topics. And that's not to say that Nelk and Gideon are terrible creators by any means. Instead, they're just examples to other influencers that this stuff pays off well. Nelk's built an incredibly big empire. Because of this, there's going to be creators who will do things far worse than these creators, just to get views and attention. And this is where things get dangerous. And perhaps no creator is more guilty of causing public chaos in the name of content than Arab Andy, a former Twitch and YouTube live streamer who has since been banned from both platforms. Arab Andy was notorious for streaming every aspect of his life and letting chat donations dictate his actions to the extreme. In addition to this, Andy's viewers could donate to play an audio of their choosing from a speaker on his person.
In the name of all of you Americans, come will from this in my bag in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yo, man.
Good night, you trash n***ers.
But yeah.
Predictably, this niche was a ticking time bomb for Andy, because in 2018, live on stream, he entered a University of Washington classroom full of students, and in the video, Andy calls for everyone's attention and plays an audio from one of his viewers' donations. With students and faculty thinking that this was a real bomb threat, everyone immediately ran for their lives. Arab Andy was initially sentenced to 10 years in prison, which was later reduced to 2 months. Arab Andy's experiment not only proved that giving the internet full control over your life can backfire catastrophically, but that viewers en masse crave a glimpse into unfiltered chaos and authentic human reactions to unprecedented situations. That is, as long as they can keep a safe distance behind their keyboards, and this can easily be capitalized on. And few understand this, quite like Jake Paul. During the summer of 2020, civil unrest had overtaken the United States. Protests by Black Lives Matter were occurring daily in almost every major US city, and during the chaos, there were tons of examples of retail stores being looted by bad faith actors who were using all the chaos to commit crime on innocent people. Well, Jake was actually witnessed and photographed at the scene of the looting and vandalization of the Scottsdale Mall in Arizona, with police citing that they'd received hundreds of tips about his presence amongst the crowd. Jake was then subsequently taken into custody by law enforcement and charged with misdemeanor trespassing as well as unlawful assembly. But it's really hard to believe that a high-profile multi-millionaire like Jake Paul was at this mall to steal a few $100s worth of merchandise. So why was he there? Well, of course, for content, and Jake would tell you that himself. Soon after his arrest, he released a statement on Twitter to disclaim that he nor anyone in his group had anything to do with looting or vandalism, and that they were there to film everything. He also claimed that this was an effort to bring more attention to the Black Lives Matter movement and the anger that affected communities were feeling at the time. But it's no mystery why Jake was at a chaotic looting at a mall rather than an organized civil protest outside a city hall. Jake was just there to get views and virtue signal. And although he claimed to be in full support of Black Lives Matter, he was just there to broadcast himself, doing everything he could to look good in front of viewers. And because this sparked more controversy, he would get more views. And whilst normal people saw tragedy and legitimate anger on both sides of the political spectrum, Jake Paul just saw more opportunity to make money for himself. And while he wasn't able to post his footage from that day, Jake was fortunately able to post and clickbait his actual arrest. But while Jake Paul isn't the only Paul brother to have been arrested, he is the only Paul brother to have been arrested in the US. Logan Paul's arrest took place far from Ohio. Logan explained in a 2017 video he posted that he was actually arrested in Italy. And to be fair, the story was fairly uneventful. He was apprehended by Italian military after he was caught flying a drone around the Colosseum. And while this does sound rather innocuous, it's actually emblematic of something that plagues other famous YouTubers. Logan thinking he can disregard a minor law surrounding historic landmarks all in the name of content reeks of entitlement. And Logan is far from the worst offender when it comes to entitled breaking of laws abroad, the most recent of the bunch being YouTuber Phidias. Phidias has made a name for himself in recent years with his tasteless thumbnails, blatant stalking of Elon Musk, and for stealing from the homeless to conquer a self-imposed survival challenge. However, his first arrest didn't come until this year, while he was in Japan filming a video in which he would attempt to travel across the entire country for free. It was absolutely full of stupid and just plain criminal behavior. Some of the highlights were Phidias dodging train fares wherever he could. One of his favorite strategies was to lock himself in the toilet and pretend to be sick, slipping off the train once the coast was clear. Another one of his exploits was dining and dashing from a 5-star hotel breakfast, leaving the bill unpaid. He even tried to get out of a 50-cent bus fare discrepancy after the money he begged for wasn't enough to pay the whole bill. The police even held him for 5 hours over that one. But this whole thing was just a massive slap in the face of a country with a culture of hospitality and public order, a series of stunts that only showed how he could abuse people's trust and goodwill. Phidias might have seen Japan as an easy target because they just aren't used to dealing with people like him. And one of the strangest aspects of the video is that it's relatively easy to travel for free in Japan because of the trusting culture that Phidias was taking advantage of. Hitchhiking in the country is much safer and easier than tons of other places, meaning all of his stunts were purely for the cameras and the attention. Ice Poseidon is probably the most well known for these kinds of streams. He's been doing it for years. He practically invented the most toxic of genres, but one of his most recent stunts backfired when Australian police briefly arrested him and fellow YouTube prankster Sam Pepper in late 2023, after the duo had the bright idea of hiring caught online as a victim for one of their so-called social experiments, where they got her to agree to do her work while they filmed it, leaving out the fact that they were going to be streaming it live on Kick. And as the encounter unfolded, the two sat in the next room over as the views kept rolling in, but when the woman became aware of the scheme, it got messy. The third person who was doing the act tried to stop her from leaving. When she could finally get out, Australian police arrested both Sam and Ice Poseidon, but strangely let them go after a few hours. It was a cruel and shameful act, but apparently the police must have seen it in a different way. And our next YouTuber takes this to a whole other level. You see, Bait Alaska is a special breed of in-real-life streamer who's focused on creating the most toxic community possible. A typical Bait Alaska stream might consist of him walking around the streets of America, waving his phone in people's faces and trying to provoke them into a confrontation. Meanwhile, his viewers can donate and have whatever they want played on a speaker. Inevitably, most of it is hate speech or racist chants. To this, Bait Alaska reacts with fiend disappointment and embarrassment. He's playing the straight man to his more extreme audience, while still being part of the in crowd. Eventually, he will find someone who won't leave once the racism starts, and that's when he doubles down, with the whole thing often ending with pepper spray, but not just from his victims. Baked was actually arrested in early 2022 and given a 30-day sentence for pepper spraying a bar employee in Arizona. But this wasn't his only crime. Bait Alaska is both promoting and profiting from the phenomenon of the online echo chamber. His streams around his persona implicitly encourage the abuse and the escalation, and the more incentivized towards donating edgy language his audience are, the more he gets paid. Before finding his own crowd of wannabe clan members, Baked worked for BuzzFeed in their social media department. It was there he learned how to make money and gain attention. But when he started shifting more to the right, he eventually lost his job, and it's hard to tell how serious Bait Alaska really is, because a modern technique by extremist groups is to shroud their beliefs in layers of irony and sarcasm, which makes it more palatable for new audiences and gives them an easy excuse. He could even be apathetic to all of it, pretending to be a far-right extremist so that he can extract wealth and exploit this echo chamber of viewers. He even seemed to have a change of heart at one point. mind. In a 2019 article, he told the Daily Dot that he was brainwashed and that he felt like he was part of a cult, and this was in response to the tragic New Zealand shooting carried out by an alt-right extremist. However, his reformation didn't last long, and as time went on, it got harder to believe that he was just playing a character. His participation in the January 6th riots didn't get him any points either. Instead, it got him 60 days in jail, 2 years of probation, and another misdemeanor charge to add to the collection instead. With any luck, Baked Alaska will slowly see his audience dry up as he fades into obscurity. There's always the lurking danger that people will latch on to the hate and act on it. It's already happened time and time again. And streamers like Baked Alaska are the most dangerous and destructive towards society because they give these evil ideologies the content to keep indoctrinating more people, something he knows himself, but at this point he's got nothing else left. While Baked Alaska might play a role in fueling the mental illness and violent tendencies of others, our next YouTuber has been on the other end of the cycle entirely. Boogie2988 has been absorbing and putting out negativity online for years. Once a well-respected YouTuber known as one of the friendliest and nicest guys on the internet, Boogie's downfall has been a decade-long tragedy. Now, Boogie's been enjoying a small renaissance recently with the release of Mike Clum's brilliant debut documentary about him, and there's some unforgettable scenes, but one of the most memorable is his conversation with an employee at a professional staffing agency.
I am disabled, there's that. Now, the downside of that is I am extremely depressed, so there's some mental health issues that we bring to the table. And then physically, I am morbidly obese. I have no references, no work history, and no education. And when you Google my name, you might see rumors that I beat my ex-wife, and I am also a
It has to be seen to be believed, but what makes it so enticing is the conflict between real life and the victim mentality that Boogie has been peddling online for years. Every attempt Boogie makes at coasting forward on sympathy gets politely shut down, every guilt trip gets ignored. It prompts him to give up entirely and go back to his online bubble. Not that he was ever actually serious about getting a job to begin with. Boogie's underlying mental illnesses and his depressive attitude have been both rewarded and made worse by the internet. While his few remaining fans have somehow kept him afloat financially, the legions of people either rightfully criticizing or making personal attacks have given him yet another excuse to be miserable. And it was one of these trolls, an ex-YouTuber called Frank Hassel, that pushed him over the edge. Hassel is a character who's pretty similar to Baked Alaska. He makes right-leaning live streams, which often involve him harassing members of the public or generally trying to provoke a reaction. A strategy that got him banned off YouTube before all of this occurred, and it was in 2020 that he decided to begin harassing Boogie, starting an internet feud that would eventually go horribly wrong. You see, like most internet drama, it all began on Twitter, with Frank Hassel sending multiple threats and public insults to Boogie over a period of weeks and months. Boogie wasn't innocent either, of course, threatening Frank right back. Frank then leaked their DMs on Twitter, and eventually the two got into it during a podcast. Frank said that he would go to Boogie's house and make him cry, whilst Boogie said he would hurt him if he showed up, which he immediately tried to backpedal on. Then the day came when Frank tweeted that he was in Boogie's hometown. Boogie was clearly paranoid, and rightfully so, ranting all night on Twitter and suspecting everyone who came to his door of being Frank. On another podcast soon after, Boogie told Frank that he would f***ing end him if he ever came to his house.
But I have no problem if you can come here. Okay?
When Frank finally did show up at Boogie's house, at first Boogie didn't even open the door, but after some goading he eventually gave up and fired a warning shot to try and scare Frank away.
Boogie2988 online said someone traveled from out of state as part of a harassment campaign for a rival YouTuber. Williams reportedly told the person to leave and fired a warning shot.
Frank did leave, but only after hurling a few more insults at Boogie. A year after the incident, Boogie was actually charged with aggravated assault and was forced to pay a $5,000 bond for his release, after being booked into the Washington County Jail in Arkansas. Boogie really only spent a little over 3 hours in jail though, and settled with a plea deal a short time afterwards.
So that's how I spent a whole 4 or 5 hours in prison, and that was enough to break me. It still really messes with me. For the people who've been in there for days, weeks, months, years, I don't know how you do it. I'm lucky. I'm privileged, right? Like, they could have not given me bail. I could have not been able to afford bail. They could have held me until my trial date, right? I only spent 4 hours in there, but some people...
It's a chilling story of how the online world can amplify and aggravate mental health issues, leading to a reaction far out of proportion with reality. However, unlike Boogie, some YouTubers actively seek out the conflict. Corey Cornut and Savannah Grillot were two people who decided to take matters into their own hands, and their mistake was posting it all on YouTube. You see, the couple began plotting their revenge. After just within a week of moving into their new home, their car was broken into twice. So the plan was simple. They'd just leave an unlocked bike in their front yard and beat whoever tried to steal it with a metal baseball bat. When the police eventually caught on, they charged both of them with assault with a deadly weapon. The thieves went unprosecuted, although in a sense they'd already been punished. However, the police reported alleged 4 times that the couple had done this, but an interview conducted by local news with one of the neighbors implied it happened a lot more times than that. The news even implied that the couple were luring people into their yard with the bike, but it's hard to see how that's really the case here. If it was an open suitcase of money, it might be different, but leaving a bike in your own yard isn't really the same thing as inviting them in to steal it. You can see why so many people sympathize with the couple here. Now, it is a relief that the charges were dropped soon afterwards, with the police saying that the would-be thieves all refused to testify. But seeing as the state didn't promise any of them immunity for trying to steal the bike, it's a result they would have expected. Even if they did prosecute, it's also incredibly unlikely any jury with half a brain cell would actually convict this couple. Obviously, it goes without saying that you really shouldn't do this. But while the justice system might not be perfect by any means, at least it got this one mostly right. Unfortunately though, not all the cases of people showing off to the internet have such a good ending. In fact, the attention and the monetary incentive that it provides can often lead twisted people down dark paths, and one of these monstrous people is Stanislav, a Russian streamer and YouTuber who went by the name of Replay Online. It was a truly awful situation. Stanislav lived in an apartment north of Moscow with his girlfriend, where he would stream their lives to a growing audience, and he was truly depraved. Lots of the streams were something you might expect from the deepest recesses of the dark web, not YouTube or Twitch. Stanislav abused his girlfriend over a long period, often acting out the sick wishes of people who would pay him for the privilege online. He is alleged to have covered her in pepper spray and to have beaten her with objects in his own hands. This was along with drinking large amounts of alcohol and doing other incredibly dangerous stunts. But then the tragic day came. Stanislav had already beaten his girlfriend throughout the day, but then he locked her outside in the freezing cold for 15 minutes because of a viewer donation. This was all too much for her to take, and she passed away at some point in the stream. And when Stanislav failed to revive her after dragging her back to the house, law enforcement was called and he was promptly arrested. At first, it was thought that she had died from hypothermia, but later reports showed that she might have suffered injuries from blows to the head, nearly certainly a result of Stanislav's cruelty. Stanislav was then sentenced to only 6 years for manslaughter, far too short a time for taking someone's actual life like he did. Another injustice on top of this is that the people who encouraged the abuse and paid money to see it happen have all gotten away scot-free. But as we've seen with Stanislav, the internet can become a source of motivation for people with twisted minds. But in the early days of the internet, it wasn't like this at all. It was a more innocent time where even the biggest YouTubers spoke to their relatively small audiences through 360p camcorders. But even back then, there was darkness lurking right under the surface. Trey Eric Seltzer, known as Mr. Anime Online, was one of these YouTubers. If you saw one of his old videos, you probably wouldn't be able to tell anything was wrong. He made a name for himself in the community all the way back in 2006, posting anime reviews and classic other YouTube skits. Over the course of his channel, he gained over 1 million views, a huge achievement for such an early period in YouTube history. But over time, the videos began taking a darker tone. The anime videos started to dry up as Trey started making more and more videos about one of his new obsessions, firearms. However, behind the scenes, Trey was drinking heavily as well, and became enamored with previous school shootings. Seltzer would actually confess later on that he had begun shooting his guns into random buildings, starting fires, and actually killed his pet rabbit. And he built up this huge plan in his mind to act out the awful crimes he admired so much at his old high school. In one of Trey's final videos, he cryptically alludes to a new job opportunity and that there are bigger things in the future. Little did his audience know what these plans really were. The tragedy came in March of 2012. First, Trey went back to his family home and shot his mother, his brother, and then his father. In his own twisted logic, Trey later said that he wanted to spare them from knowing about what he was going to do. And after wrecking the house and writing guilty messages on the walls, he drove to his old high school. But after sitting in the parking lot for a few hours, he decided to cut his plan short and drove to a friend's house instead. And it was there that police arrested him and uncovered the extent of his crimes. It's unknown whether Trey decided to stop his plan altogether or just got caught before he could bring himself to carry it out. But Trey was obviously a disturbed individual who went down an incredibly dark path. The cocktail of substance abuse, mental health issues, narcissism, and isolation caused him to do the unthinkable. Eventually, he would be sentenced to life in prison without parole, where he is to this day. Now, some of the crimes and criminals we've discussed today are truly awful. In some of the cases, it was coincidental that the perpetrator was a YouTuber, but in others, it played a huge role in their offenses and their crimes. The chase for vanity, and doing anything they can for views. But in every case, it's important not to glorify the people behind the crimes, but to take their stories as a warning. Otherwise, we could indirectly contribute to the next tragedy to unfold.